altitude 300 feet above the Caribbean Sea, just 47 nautical miles north of Caracas. The horizon burns gold under the late sun, but what unfolds beneath that light is anything but calm. The U.S. Navy destroyer USS Porter slices through the shimmering water, her radar sweeping wide arcs of invisible power across Venezuelan territory. On the southern coastline, hidden among mangrove-covered ridges, Venezuelan naval officers hunch over consoles deep inside the fortified command bunker at Puerto Cabello. Every movement of that warship glows on their radar like a living pulse. For months, tensions had been rising: intelligence flights, accusations of sabotage, oil embargo threats. But this was the first time an American vessel had come this close. The order came quietly through encrypted comms: activate Calibra-V targeting matrix. Inside a camouflaged launch silo, two sleek graphite-colored missiles shift onto their rails. Venezuela's newest creation, the Calibra-V, a homegrown cruise missile capable of supersonic sea-skimming flight, hums alive with electronic precision. At sea, sailors aboard the Porter detect something unusual, a faint radar lock quickly dismissed as coastal interference. Then it happens, all tracking systems light up red. The Caribbean suddenly goes silent. In that frozen instant, the fate of two nations trembles on a knife's edge. What pushed Venezuela to aim its own missile at an American destroyer? And how did this moment spiral into a global standoff that nobody saw coming? The moment the radar lock alarm flared on the USS Porter, the bridge burst into motion. Commander Elliot Graves, a 41-year-old veteran of multiple deployments in the Persian Gulf, barked for a full-spectrum scan. The destroyer's AN/Spy-1D radar array pivoted, emitting pulses of blue electromagnetic energy into the thick Caribbean air. The readout confirmed what no one aboard wanted to believe: a solid lock origin, Venezuelan coastal coordinates. Far inland in a reinforced operations center outside Caracas, Captain Rafael Mendez of the Bolivarian Navy watched the data stream stabilize. Around him, young technicians in digital fatigues murmured to each other, their eyes wide. The Calibra-V was Venezuela's first indigenous cruise missile built under heavy secrecy, through hybrid Russian-Iranian engineering support, designed to strike naval targets within 300 kilometers. Few outside a classified circle believed it was operational, yet at 1746 local time, two vertical doors slid open along the Venezuelan shoreline. The Calibra-V's boosters ignited with a low, shuddering roar that rolled over the jungle canopy. From the air, they appeared like streaks of molten silver rising over the surf, diving instantly to sea-skimming altitude barely 15 meters above the waves. On board Porter, the Aegis combat system reacted automatically. "Missile inbound," the electronic warfare officer shouted. Countermeasures launched clouds of decoys, electronic jamming bursts, defensive chaff, dispersing in spirals. The destroyer turned starboard hard, cutting a white wound into the sea. Yet the first Calibra held its lock, its terrain following radar, adjusting weaving just above the waterline. Meanwhile, across the hemisphere, satellite intelligence teams at U.S. Southern Command in Doral, Florida, scrambled for confirmation. Multiple communications channels lit up. The president was briefed within minutes. The message: possible hostile missile launch, Venezuela. Target U.S. naval asset. By 1749, the first Calibra-V was within 20 kilometers. Porter's phalanx CIWS spun up the twin Gatling barrels, roaring 500 rounds per minute, tearing into the approaching glare. A blossom of metal and seawater erupted contact. The missile disintegrated before impact, raining debris across the waves. But the second missile had already adjusted course, sliding under the radar threshold following the curvature of the Earth's horizon. When it appeared again on sensors, it was too close. A thunderous impact wave slammed into Porter's starboard side, not a direct hit. The missile detonated prematurely, just 50 meters off. Shrapnel shredded communication antennas and radar panels. Several sailors were injured by shock waves and flying fragments. The ship listed briefly before stabilizing. Damage control teams raced across the deck, sealing hatches and extinguishing small fires. From Caracas, state television interrupted broadcasts with breaking news banners: Venezuelan Defense Forces respond to U.S. incursion. The footage taken from coastal observation drones showed the vapor trails of the Calibra-V launches edited for triumph. Across Washington, panic turned to controlled outrage. The Pentagon ordered all nearby U.S. vessels to reposition to defensive perimeter Delta grid. The Navy's 5th Fleet in Bahrain was notified. Strategic bombers at Barksdale Air Force Base were placed on elevated readiness. Within 2 hours, the event was trending across global networks. Analysts split into two camps, those claiming Venezuela had acted recklessly, and those arguing that the U.S. destroyer had violated territorial waters. Caracas released radar data claiming the Porter was just 11 nautical miles from its coastline inside the 12-mile limit recognized by maritime law. The U.S. countered, calling the data falsified. At 23:00 local time, the Venezuelan president appeared on national television flanked by military officers. "We have defended our sovereignty against unauthorized aggression," he declared, his tone calm but defiant. "Let no empire test our patience again." In the crowd behind him, Captain Mendez stood silent, expression unreadable. In Florida, Commander Graves's after-action report painted a different picture. Porter was conducting lawful freedom of navigation patrols in international waters. The radar lock had been unprovoked. The missile launch an act of aggression. The incident instantly became the centerpiece of an emergency United Nations Security Council meeting called by the United States. Meanwhile, social media across Latin America erupted with patriotic fervor. Hashtags like Defensa Bolivariana and Calibra-V dominated regional trends. Grainy videos of the missile launches captured by fishermen along the coast spread faster than official statements. Some showed one missile striking the sea near the destroyer, others explosions edited with heroic music. For many Venezuelans, it was the first tangible sign that their country could challenge a superpower. For Washington, it was a nightmare, a reminder that even small nations now possessed weapons capable of rewriting deterrence doctrines. In the hours following the strike, reconnaissance satellites tracked unusual activity across Venezuelan bases. Additional Calibra-V units were being moved toward western launch points while coastal radar batteries powered up in full. U.S. analysts debated whether this indicated preparation for a follow-up strike or a show of deterrence. By dawn, the Caribbean was no longer a tranquil blue frontier. It had become a high-stakes chessboard of steel electronics and politics. Each side waited for the other to blink a silence heavier than war itself. And deep in the underground command bunker outside Caracas, as storm clouds rolled over the coastline, Captain Mendez leaned over a flickering map display. He whispered to his deputy, "They'll come, but not yet. When they do, we'll be ready." Outside, the launch silos remained open, the scent of burnt fuel still clinging to the sea breeze. The world held its breath, unaware that the next 48 hours would push the hemisphere to the brink of open conflict. At 0410 local time, less than 12 hours after the Calibra-V strike, a pair of U.S. Air Force MQ-25 Stingray drones launched from an aircraft carrier strike group repositioned near Puerto Rico. Their mission conduct high-altitude reconnaissance over the Venezuelan coastline, gather visual proof of the missile installations, and prepare for a potential precision response. The Caribbean sky was heavy with tropical haze, as dawn broke, the kind that diffuses sunlight into a pale silver sheet across the water. From above 40,000 feet, the drones' electro-optical cameras captured the exact coordinates of the Calibra launch site at Puerto Cabello, still smoking missile gantries, extended technicians working openly as though daring the Americans to strike again. At the Pentagon, analysts confirmed the imagery. A decision tree unfolded across screens, limited strike, full suppression, or diplomatic restraint. But the mood in the Situation Room was already leaning toward action. Public outrage was building. News anchors spoke of an attack on American sovereignty. Lawmakers demanded retaliation. At 0927, the president signed Directive Falcon response. Within minutes, a U.S. Navy EA-18G Growler electronic warfare jet from the carrier USS George H.W. Bush jammed Venezuelan radar frequencies. Behind it, a formation of FA-18 Super Hornets armed with AGM-158 JSSM cruise missiles swept toward the mainland under complete radio silence. Captain Mendez, alerted by early warning radar systems, ordered immediate dispersal of coastal defenses. Mobile anti-air launchers rolled out from hangars crews, scrambling into position. Yet the American strike came faster than expected. 2 JASSMs streaked across the coastline at subsonic speed, weaving between terrain folds. One missile struck an abandoned warehouse. The other hit the edge of the launch complex, detonating fuel reserves and engulfing the site in orange fire. From nearby towns, residents felt the shockwave ripple through windows. Black smoke coiled into the humid air. Venezuelan state TV instantly labeled the strike a criminal act of aggression. But Washington framed it as a calibrated response to neutralize a hostile platform. In the hours that followed, the air above Caracas became a theater of electronic warfare. Venezuelan S-300 air defense batteries lit up the sky with missiles chasing invisible threats. Dozens of drones circled in the upper atmosphere, some American, some Venezuelan, others belonging to private contractors and unknown operators, broadcasting live feeds to millions online. The crisis had become digital. Every detonation, every intercept, every radar lock was amplified across global social media in real time. The world watched the Caribbean turn into a testing ground for hybrid warfare, satellites, cyber strikes, and information operations converging in one volatile theater. Inside the Bolivarian command bunker, Mendez received word communications grid in the north compromised. 2 bases offline. He exhaled sharply. Switch to analog fallback, he ordered. His staff began relaying coordinates manually through encrypted shortwave. Venezuela's naval fleet stationed at La Guaira was ordered to reposition, form a defensive ring around the oil terminals that dotted the coastline. Across the ocean, U.S. intelligence confirmed radar pings from Venezuelan fast attack boats, possibly preparing for retaliation. Carrier groups tightened their perimeter. Warplanes began continuous combat air patrols. By evening, the Caribbean horizon was lined with silhouettes, destroyers, frigates, and submarines surfacing briefly, like predators, testing the air. Above, streaks of contrails marked the sky, tracing invisible lines of threat and power. The Organization of American States convened an emergency session in Washington. Diplomats spoke of avoiding escalation, but behind closed doors, both U.S. and Venezuelan envoys traded ultimatums. Russia's foreign minister issued a statement of support for Caracas, condemning the American strike as imperialist aggression. China called for restraint, but quietly offered technical assistance to reinforce Venezuelan radar. By nightfall, the city of Caracas was under blackout. Anti-air sirens echoed intermittently, their wail drifting over hills toward the sea. From his vantage point atop the command tower, Captain Mendez could see the distant glow of burning fuel tanks in Puerto Cabello. His nation had survived the first wave, barely. He knew the next decision was his, whether to escalate or to preserve what remained of deterrence. His officers waited for orders in silence. Outside, thunder rolled over the Caribbean, mingling with the fading sound of fighter jets screaming into the clouds. The world's eyes were fixed on Venezuela now. One more miscalculation, one more missile fire, and the hemisphere would ignite. By dawn on the second day, the Caribbean was no longer a sea. It was a nerve stretched thin between 2 nations staring each other down. Satellite images revealed an expanding U.S. naval perimeter, 5 destroyers forming a floating wall along the 15 degrees north latitude line. South of that invisible boundary, Venezuelan patrol craft moved like shadows, hugging the coastline. Broadcasting encrypted distress calls meant to confuse radar networks. At 0632, a U.S. P-8 Poseidon surveillance aircraft detected multiple heat signatures rising from inland Venezuela missile transport vehicles repositioning again. Analysts at Southern Command classified it as potential preparation for a second Calibra-V launch. The president's advisors argued over a response. Some demanded preemptive strikes to eliminate the threat. Others warned that one wrong missile could turn the Caribbean into a battlefield. In Caracas, Captain Rafael Mendez stood before a map littered with blinking lights. His communications staff relayed a message from Moscow support, available through non-direct assets. Cryptic words, but clear enough. Satellite jamming assistance, perhaps? Intelligence relays, definitely. He knew that foreign support could embolden his government or doom it. if Washington interpreted it as direct intervention. Meanwhile, in the calm corridor beneath the Pentagon, an urgent report crossed the secure network. Intercepted Venezuelan communication suggested that one Calibra-V launcher remained armed. The image, a thermal outline in jungle terrain, became the most analyzed photograph on the planet that morning. At 0810, a tense phone call linked Washington and Caracas. Through diplomatic back channels, both sides exchanged stark ultimatums. The U.S. demanded immediate dismantlement of missile infrastructure under international inspection. Caracas countered by demanding withdrawal of American warships from what it termed restricted maritime zones. The conversation ended with silence. In Puerto Cabello, technicians worked feverishly to relocate the remaining missile to a hidden transport vehicle. Each minute felt like eternity. Civilians in coastal towns packed essentials lining highways toward the interior. Gasoline stations overflowed. Markets closed. Military convoys thundered through intersections, shaking glass windows. Then, 11:57 a.m. sensors aboard the USS Porter registered a faint radar balloon to the southwest. Alarms screamed through the ship. Possible launch signature detected, countermeasures prepared. Phalanx turrets spun into motion, but within seconds the signature vanished. False echo. Atmospheric interference. The tension remained heavier than before. The world's media went into frenzy. Live news streams displayed maps with flashing arrows, anchors speculating on nuclear escalation. The hashtag #CaribbeanCrisis surpassed 200 million mentions in under 2 hours. People everywhere refreshed their feeds, as if the next post might reveal the start of World War III. At 13:25, something unexpected broke the spiral. A Venezuelan Navy helicopter transmitted an open band message, not encrypted, not hidden ceasefire signal in progress. Stand down radar. Coordinates transmitting for verification. The signal was authentic. Captain Mendez had made the call himself. He had overridden orders from higher command, risking court-martial, perhaps execution. But he believed the next hour could decide everything. In the skies above, U.S. pilots held their positions. The carrier group slowed to half speed. On both sides, gunners hesitated, fingers resting just above triggers. The ocean itself seemed to still. For nearly 4 hours, nothing moved. Diplomatic channels reignited. Swiss mediators facilitated encrypted communication lines. Both governments agreed to an emergency monitoring mission, neutral drones from Brazil, to verify demobilization of launch sites. When confirmation arrived, the president ordered all U.S. strike packages to return to base. The sun dipped low over the Caribbean, painting the water crimson and gold, as if the ocean itself bled relief. Sailors aboard Porter stood on deck, watching the horizon flicker with lightning in the distance, the last echoes of the storm that had nearly consumed them. In Caracas, Captain Mendez walked alone through the silent corridor of the command bunker. The walls smelled of fuel and burnt circuits. A young officer approached, trembling. "Sir, we stood them down. No losses today." Mendez nodded but didn't smile. He simply looked toward the ceiling as if he could see through the concrete up to the fading sky. Outside, the city lights flickered back to life. Children emerged from basements. Radios returned to music. And somewhere beyond the sound of the sea, the world exhaled together. The 48-hour crisis had ended not with a final explosion, but with the rarest act in modern warfare, restraint. For now, the Caribbean slept again. But every admiral, every pilot, every watcher of the sea knew the truth. The silence was only temporary. The next spark could come from anywhere at any time. And when it did, the ocean would remember.